Hello and welcome to Walpole United WFC. Hello and welcome to Walpole United with me, John Foster at UFC. Got an interesting show tonight. We're going to talk a bit about media bias. We're going to talk a bit about that league structure that we've just recently seen from Michael Cox. And we'll start the show just talking a little bit about Skinner, manager of the month again. That's 2 months on the trot. And Galton as well, getting player of the month. So a few things to get into there. Natalie, how you keeping, mate? You okay?
Yeah, I'm doing good.
Nice one. Reece, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.
As always, no problem. And Rich, welcome back to the show. How you doing?
Yeah, good, mate. Thanks. Reece gave me a bit of stick for missing the last couple, so.
Yeah, it's nice of me to turn up this week, Rich.
Where was you last week, Rich? Just in case anybody doesn't know.
Oh, I was in Manchester somewhere. I was only night out.
Yeah.
No, it's good to have you back on. Thank you. And I know you guys know each other very well as well. So we'll get into all this as well. Let's just start off, Nat. Skinner, back-to-back manager of the month. Great to see another team photo with him and his coaches. We hear things about Martin Hull getting very involved with the coaching as well, which is great to see. You know, as much as I play Skinner, it's nice to see Martin Hull getting a few plaudits from the fans as well. What are your thoughts on this? 2 months on the trot. It's not bad going, is it?
Well, yeah, we're doing what we should be doing. Winning games that we should be winning. I know, obviously, we beat Arsenal in the run, but for me, I think really we should have beaten Arsenal on Saturday, Sunday, whenever it was. Saturday, we should have beaten them. I think we were the far better team. And yeah, I just think he deserves it. Like you say, we know Martin's taken a lot of training, but for me, I think that's good because I think Martin's doing more, Charlotte Healy's doing more, whoever else is doing more. It's all good. It's what you want to see. They've got a new coaching called Chris Rush. For me, I think Casey, she did a lot and it was great, but in the long run, that's probably what burnt her out. Because I know when we started in the Championship, Casey was doing everything, and they brought in a video analysis and all this kind of stuff that we probably didn't have in the Championship. It was just all Casey, and by the time you get people like Martin Ho, Charlotte Healy, you need them to sort of go and do what they do best. So it's good that they're getting to shine as well, not just Mark. But then he said it's not him, it's his whole team, it's the players, it's the staff, it's the fans, it's what managers always say. But it is true. Martin does a lot. This one does a lot. That one does a lot. But they're world-class coaches, so there's no point bringing people like that in if they're not gonna do the work, really.
Yeah, Rich, I just want to hear your thoughts on this for a second. We spoke a bit about Skinner and his team. You obviously work closely with managers as well over in Sheffield. How much is it like the manager? Does the manager kind of give their vision and then kind of allow their coaches to kind of portray that vision on the pitch, or the coaches and managers kind of, is it like 50-50 on the training ground? How does it kind of work in women's football?
I don't think it's specific to women's football. I think it's different at every club, but generally your manager will dictate sort of what the sessions are going to look like, and more often than not, your coaches will have sort of a larger part in executing it. You might have points where they split into two. The defenders might go with your coach, the attackers might go with your manager, or vice versa. And then, generally that's what we do. And then they all come together at the end. I remember when Wardy was there, Wardy always used to take the attackers, and Tom Fitton always used to take the defenders. Like, that was kind of a regular thing. So yeah, it's generally delegated. Like, you'll see that a lot in sessions. I'm sure it's the same at United, where Mark will take a group and Martin will take a group, because Martin's a fantastic coach. Like, I think you ask anybody, he's one of the most well-respected coaches in the league, and he's very, very good at his job. So yeah, I mean, it's not always just about the manager. They lead and they will dictate the systems and the tactics and how they train, but you can't do it all yourself. That's why you need your assistant managers, your coaches, and things like that. So they will do a mix. They'll split and do things in little groups, and then generally they'll probably all just come together at the end of the session and do something as a group where all the coaches are kind of involved together.
Well, I just want to say about the split and what you just said. When we went to Norway, we saw a training session, and it won't be sort of, it wasn't like it's a full hour, but it was basically all warm up together. Defenders went with Casey, and then attackers went with Glenn Harris, and I don't think Martin was there at the time. And then obviously, what's his face? Ian took the goalkeepers. So yeah, they did all split, and they all came together, and then it was just thing. But like they had their set drills, so I don't know whether they still do it now or whether whatever it is. I think it's sort of like a Fergie maybe thing. Like he sort of says, "This is the view," and Martin and Charlotte just go and do it. Or Carl Green's there as well, and he's someone else he brought in. Like I say, Chris Rush. But I like that. I like. Because obviously these girls are used to sort of Healy being there and Martin and Ian. So, it probably needs Martin to sort of come and say, Martin believes in it, then the rest will, kind of thing, if you get what I mean. I think that was how it was at the start. But now the coaches are more, probably know what he's talking about and understand him a bit more, because I think even the fans understand what Mark's saying a bit more. So it's definitely changed, but it's changed for the best. And I agree with that comment. If we failed now, we've only got ourselves to blame.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Sorry if my Wi-Fi is going a bit funny. I'm not too sure if you can still hear me or see me. But I'll keep chatting anyway. Reece, I just wanted to kind of ask you, from an age's point of view, like how marketable do you think Skinner actually is? Is he someone that you kind of like to have on your books if you were looking after managers as well?
Listen, anyone that's got the Man United job's marketable. I think he's done fantastic this season, in a transition season for the club as well.
Oh, he's gone. I'm sure he's going to come back in. But go on, carry on.
No, I'm just saying. I think anyone that's got the Man United job's marketable. You don't get the Man United job because you're just a manager. You get the Man United job because you're a good manager and you've got a good track record. So
I can't see John, but no, I can see him now. But yeah, moving on from that. Anyway, Man United are great. We can see you, John. I hope you two boys can see me as well. But yeah, what we're here for, the big topic, the topic that we've been waiting for. We've been building up to it. Media bias. And I think you sort of started it, Reece, last week when we had someone missing. But I just want you to carry on, because if you ask any United fan, the media are biased. If you just look at sort of the way that they, if you talk about managers, we're talking about Casey and stuff, the way they reported things in the summer with Casey leaving. But Joe Montemurro left as well, and there was issues at Arsenal as well. There's issues, well-known issues at Birmingham as well. God, if you look at where Leicester are, they put in a lot of money. They've got great training facilities, etc. But it's more presented in a positive way, whereas, maybe Everton is presented in a negative way. These kind of things. So I just want to hear your view, I suppose, now, Reece, and then Rich. Media bias. Are they biased, or are they just doing their job and it's the way that the people perceive it? What do you think? Or do you think they present a story in a certain way to maybe get a reaction?
I wouldn't necessarily answer that question from a club's perspective. I would answer it more generalised, and I think overall. I did a poll on my Instagram story, and I think I looked at this and I think 92%. Now the vote had about 180 votes. 92% of people voted yes, the media is biased in football, not just women's football, but in football in general.
Yeah.
To answer your question, I wouldn't necessarily answer it from a club's perspective. The downside on this debate that we're going to have tonight is the media is very, very powerful. So if I now go and absolutely batter journalism and journalists and different outlets in women's football, tomorrow morning they'll all be writing stories about me. It's controversial, it's disruptive, and it's not. Whatever I speak about tonight's going to be my opinion, and obviously Rich will probably defend his industry on this as well. I get enough stick for being an agent, so I think it's now time that Rich gets a little bit. But in general, overall, I think the media is biased. I've had, I can name sort of 3, 4, 5 different examples just in the January transfer window that all involve me, where I can give a perfect example of media bias. But I mean, like Rich obviously works for a club here, so it'd be interesting to get Rich's views on this. But I mean, before Rich actually speaks, I will say that it's very rare that you see Rich do an article on Sheffield United as a journalist himself. So I don't think we're going to sit here and just absolutely batter Rich tonight.
No. And I suppose, Rich, and they'll come for me and they'll come for Man United fans. Don't worry, they already set it up against Man United fans. But no, Rich, go on. You obviously voted no in Reece's poll. You obviously come out very strongly against, and the media aren't biased, and they're the best things, and they're amazing. So go on. Talk to us.
I could sit here and speak about this for hours on end because I think there's so many different elements to it. As Reece kind of said, I mean, with Sheffield United, I keep that completely separate because I completely accept I'm compromised in terms of what I can say about Sheffield United and the Championship, so I generally stay out of it. But if there is a topic to discuss that's important, aka the Coventry situation recently is a great example where I can take that bias out of it and still look at it fairly. I've never really struggled to do that. Really, I find it quite easy to keep the two things separate. I think it's a generally interesting topic. I mean, it brings me back to the discussion we were all kind of in yesterday with Paul, the radio commentary at Coventry United, about the kind of coverage that you get and things like that. So I think that to me is a different thing. I think that's supply and demand in terms of, yes, you see a lot more coverage of the top teams because more people read about them. I mean, you look at this weekend, for example, you got the Manchester Derby. Every journalist will be at the Manchester Derby because it's the biggest game of the weekend. I wouldn't expect to see journalists turning up to Sheffield United versus Blackburn, especially when there's only really one journalist per outlet. It's supply and demand, and it's the same with TV. People say, why are Man United always on Sky or Man City or whether it's men's or women's? Because the TV companies are putting money into it, and those clubs being on TV will get them the most money back because they'll get the most viewing figures. So to me, that's kind of a different thing to bias. If that's what people think is biased, I disagree. I think bias for me is when you are generally just blinded by some, in terms of, like a fan would be. And you said that to me the other day, and that obviously fans are ridiculously biased because that's your job. I don't think the media in general is like that. Yes, there's a lean towards the big clubs in terms of coverage because that's what people want to read. That's what's going to make these companies, whether it's newspapers, TV, the most money. But it's not a bias. I think it's just a.
No, but this is where I want to then talk, because for me, and I don't know what Reece thinks, there's a lean towards reporting clubs or even players in a certain light. Whether that's, Katie McCabe, Georgia Stanway, not dirty players, but, they get a lot of fouls and there is an element of that. But then, we saw Katie McCabe get sent off, rightly for me, but there was this kind of, she didn't mean it. Well, I'm not saying she meant to go and do it, but it was a clear red card offence for me. And that's when a lot of people were like, but she's such a good player. And I'm thinking, this is where I don't understand. Then Georgia Stanway took out Leah, and then next minute, Georgia Stanway was sort of getting sympathy. And that's where I don't quite understand. Sort of, I feel that these top players, they get a lot of sympathy. It's, they're great, they're fantastic. Yeah, they're fantastic, but those two are red cards, and you got to call it as it is and say, even I'd say you, Rich, Kira Walsh, a couple of years ago, got a red card against Kirsty Hansen. She's a great player, but no one's talking about it as a player. It was a dirty tackle. She got sent off, and I just feel like we don't see that kind of reporting enough, and that's where I think there's a bit of a bias. If there's a top lioness, she won't get negative as much as maybe just a championship player or just someone else. Go on, Reece.
I agree to some extent on that. Not with everything, but to some extent. I think there's a lot of journalists in women's football where, not just women's football, but men's football as well. There's a lot of journalists in women's football where I feel sometimes they're a little bit scared to tell the brutal honesty. We look back at recent events that's happened with clubs, and I know that for a fact. The reporting that's happened across December and January, not just on certain clubs and different things that's happened behind the scenes at different clubs, but also in the transfer window. I thought the reporting overall was fairly poor. I thought a lot of the articles that came out were absolutely miles away from the truth, which I found a bit disappointing because this is the thing that's influencing women's football fans. We're still trying to grow this audience. But to answer your question there about media bias in terms of individuals, I think there's a lot of journalists that are maybe too scared to criticise individuals because they actually want to interview that individual in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 months. But if they go too heavy on an article, just use like Kira Walsh for an example, if there's a journalist that's wanting to interview Kira Walsh because she's never done an interview with her before, they're not going to go out and batter her and then 2 weeks after go and request an interview because I work with players, a player will just say, not a chance. You just wrote that about me 2 months ago. And I think there's a lot of that where in men's football, if you look at The Athletic, for example, in men's football, the articles are different to the articles that you find in men's football, in women's football. In men's football with The Athletic, it's heavily focused on negativity, I find, and giving that side of the argument. In women's football, it's a lot of trying to find the positives in negatives. And I would just like the journalists from especially over recent events, give the truth. Stop with your opinions as much. Like I read an article about an hour ago while I was in the Sheffield United training ground, and I literally read the whole article. There was not one bit of data in the article, not one statistic, not one fact, and I represent the player that's in the article, not one fact in the article. And all I read really was a full article on the journalist's opinions. And I feel like that is a lot of propaganda because I'm actually reading one person's opinion as opposed to the reality of a situation.
Reece, can I just jump in there, please? Sorry, my Wi-Fi just went absolutely crazy on me there for about 10 minutes, so I've had to go on my phone. Do you think that could be partly down to like a lack of knowledge in some cases from the journalists? And I'm not on about Richard. I'm on about like new people who may be like finding the feet, but don't know too much about the players and don't know too much about the stats. So when you kind of give your opinion, you can kind of give like a vague opinion.
Potentially, but don't write an article if you don't know all the facts. I mean, it's not hard to get hold of the people. If you want the reality of a situation, you can go to the player. Players are very accessible on social media. I'm not saying they'll respond to your direct messages, but some will. Contact the player directly. Go through their agents. Go through the clubs. Have that platform and have that streamlined system instead of just writing an article on your opinion. Because if that article gets read by 10,000 people, 10,000 people are basing their opinion off your opinion, not off the reality and the facts and the statistics and the data. And that really annoys me. But I find a lot of articles, there's certain journalists that we won't work with, and I've got no intention of working with journalists. We might have worked with them in the past and we've not been happy with the service or we've not been happy with the end product and we've just made a decision, okay, we'll not work with you no more. Like I mentioned last week on the show, I don't know if it's sort of off air or on air when I mentioned it, one journalist said to me on deadline day, have you got any stories? Have you got any deadlines? Have you any deals going through? And I said, yeah, we've got a couple, but I don't know if they'll get done. And because I wouldn't tell the journalist then refused to or threatened to not cover any of my clients till the end of the season. My response is, no problem. Don't cover my clients. We don't need external journalism. We don't need external press. My business model doesn't rely on journalists. That's sort of the old school football agents that rely on that. But that's something that I do get very, very, it winds me up more than what it should do when I read an article and it's just for journalists' opinions. But to answer your question, John, women's football is very accessible still. It's getting more and more, it's getting harder to access players, but it's still accessible in comparison to men's football. So, yeah, it could be down to lack of knowledge by journalists, but if you don't know the full facts on the subject, stop writing the article. My opinion. Again,
I agree. And like I said, I sort of said what I said before. Certain clubs and players are presented in a light as a fact when necessarily it's not a fact. So I just want to hear, I suppose, Rich, on what Reece has said and what I said before. What do you say to that kind of bias?
Well, there was a lot to take in there. I mean, regarding what you said, Nat, on the red cards, I'm probably not the best person to ask because I thought they were all red cards. Whether you think someone's a dirty player or whatever, that's an opinion, but they were all red cards. In terms of what Reece said, I mean, opinion pieces have always existed in journalism, whether it's men's or women's football. I generally stay away from them because they don't massively interest me. And to be honest with you, I don't think people are that interested in what my opinion actually is. I think they'd rather hear from the players or from the managers direct. But opinion pieces are a thing, and journalists are paid to have them. And that's the beauty of opinions. Some will agree, some won't. But I think they're kind of there to stay. In terms of journalism.
Sorry, Rich, just on that, what? So if we split this from 100%, how much of that 100% should be journalist opinion and reality of situation? Should it be sort of 90% reality backed up by stats and data, and then 10% journalist opinion, or should that be 50-50 or 70-30? What do you reckon?
I think it's up to a journalist at the end of the day. I mean, if I was writing an opinion piece, you obviously want to be factual as much as you can, but at the end of the day, it still has to be your opinion. So you can't be overly swayed by, you might go out, you might want to write a piece on a player that you think is doing well or a player that you think is doing badly. If you think that player is playing well and you want to write that, but the stats don't back it up, you still got to write it. You've got to find a way of justifying what you're saying. If you're saying this player should be getting picked for England or this player should be getting more recognition, you have to back that up yourself, whatever the stats say. If it's vice versa and someone maybe has good stats, but you're saying, well, I don't think they're playing that well, or, that you've got to back it up. That's what opinion pieces are. So, and I get they polarize opinions and people go, oh, so-and-so's biased towards this or biased against that, but opinion pieces are just that. They're opinions,
On the flip side of that, so if you work for sort of one of the bigger outlets, so we'll say like a Sky Sports or a Guardian or a Telegraph or an Athletic, are you paid as a journalist to give your opinion, or are you paid to portray what's actually happening in the situation? If I read an article and I'm reading it from a big outlet and there's not one source in there, I just think, what are you actually getting paid for as a journalist? Because that to me is just propaganda. You're getting paid just to essentially rant and give your views. Are you actually paid for your opinion, or are you paid to
report the facts?
I don't disagree with that at all, and it's why I stay away from general opinion pieces, because they don't. When I grew up, it was all about, for me, going out and speaking to people and getting the information. But it depends on. I think what people don't realize is with what journalists write or what journalists talk about, a lot of it actually comes from editors. Editors go and say, well, go and do this or go and do that. I mean, we've got a media WhatsApp chat, and we've had it for many, many years with all the sort of main journalists in it, and the demands that are probably put on them, because you got to remember as well, the women's football media, it's come on a long way. Like when I started out, it was probably 3 or 4 people that did it regularly. There wasn't a Susie, there wasn't a Molly, there wasn't a Katie, there wasn't anywhere near the amount of people that there are now. The national newspapers very rarely went near it unless it was a major tournament. They certainly didn't have people at games every single week. And while it's great now that the Guardian, the Times, the Telegraph, the Athletic, etc., all have a dedicated women's football writer, they do only have one. So, and the amount of work that they get through, trust me, having seen it up close, is ridiculous. They can't do more than one thing at once. They can't be at more than one game, and that's where it still needs to expand. And I think you will get, as women's football develops, and maybe each paper or Sky or BBC or whoever have 2 or 3 or 4 writers, that's when you'll get a bit more variety. And you might pick up the Guardian, and there's not just a Manchester United article, but there might be an Everton article, there might be a Reading article, there might be a Birmingham article. At the minute, it comes back to that supply and demand, where if there's only one person doing everything, they're going to get sent to whatever most people are going to read. And this weekend, for example, it'll be the Manchester Derby.
I've not got a problem with that. I know then people will, and people say, oh, what about Everton, and what about Leicester, Birmingham, and all that kind of stuff. I get it. But like you say, it's supply and demand. It's about growing the game, and people want to know about what Man United are doing, so they're going to write about it. But Gary said it here: people want facts, not sensationalism, not blown up stories. If one player's leaving, she's leaving. Like, don't make it and all these reasons. And I just found that in the summer everything was blown up, and then now I'm seeing, you're talking about facts and opinion pieces, but I've seen someone sort of saying Man City had the best academy in the whole world, and this is a journalist, whether they're a journalist or someone in the media, they've sort of reported Man City is the best academy in the world. And for me, that's Barcelona. But then if you look even in England, the R under 14s, R under 16s, R under 21s in the final. Man City under 21s just got beat the other day. So I don't understand how. I get the opinion, but then you're just a fan, aren't you? Just coming out with your bias, and that's what I don't understand. Basically what Gary's point is.
Well,
I don't disagree. Look, things have to be factual. That our entire job, the biggest words I always use when people ask me about journalism is context. Context is always the word that I throw out, and obviously facts sort of go side by side with that. People can have their opinions, and Nat, you said to me, a few times about what people have said about, people saying Man City have done this or done that for the women's game, and they've done some things, but so have many other clubs. But I think it's one of those where I think, from my point of view, I look at it when I'm dealing with fans, and I've said this to you, Nat, and it's not just you, it's not just United, it's many fans from many different clubs. I think sometimes people see what they want to see and people read what they want to read, and it's not necessarily always what you're saying. The thing I always say is, if I write anything, if I tweet anything, if I say anything, I have to be able to reason that, because if I can't, I'm done. So if I say so-and-so should be in the England squad or so-and-so is not doing well, I have to back it up, because people are going to say, well, hang on a minute, why do you think that? If I can't back it up, there's no point in doing it. So, but people sometimes take what you said, and I'll take the example of last week when I was talking about Jess Park at Manchester City, and you were straight in my DM saying, well, what about this player? What about that player? When you go and cover a game, you talk about that team of players. You talk about what's sat in front of you. The reason I was talking about Jess Park on that night was because I was watching Jess Park play. I wasn't watching Alessia Russo or Ella Toon or whoever else. And I tweeted, and you weren't the only one, to be fair. There were other people replying saying, oh, you think Jess Park should be the England squad or this or that? And I said, actually, if you read my tweet, that isn't actually what I said, but people take it that way. They read what they think they've read. I never actually said Jess Park should be the England squad. I said it was actually too early for it. I said if she carried on, and the context of that was she's playing in a position where there's probably an open opportunity in the next year or two in that right wing position, in terms of Chloe Kelly's injured at the moment. Nikita Paris is not playing very well. Beth Mead will probably play there, but she's more a left winger. So there's always a context to it. But people, from the frustration from my side is sometimes people read what we say and they haven't actually read what they think they've read. They've read what I think they want to read. I'm always happy to have the debate. Like, people say, oh, I disagree or this or that. Happy days. I love debating with fans on things, but it has to be, don't take things that I've said and then, come out with something different.
Can I just add on, just while we're
let me just say, Jess Park 1 goal versus Spurs and he wants her in the England squad. But go on, Reece.
That wasn't it, but we'll come back to that.
Go on, Reece.
Just while we're on the opinion pieces, so something that we get inundated every single day by journalists, whether they're at university or they're established or they're one of the Sky Sports or one of the leading outlets. What I've found, and the conclusion that I've come up with within 5 years of being a football agent, is a lot of the opinion pieces come from lazy journalism. Yeah. Now, I would say 90% of the journalists that we work with are unbelievable at the job. It's the 10% that let the rest of them down. And it's the same with any industry. It's the same with football agents. But I would believe, I think a lot of it comes from lazy journalism. The reason why I would back that up is this week, perfect example. We've got Jess Cranwell at Leicester. An outlet based in the Midlands asked to run a story on Jess Cranwell or asked to interview Jess Cranwell. Absolutely no problem. What our company policy has always been since day one is, if you want to interview one of our players in the Super League, you also have to run a story with one of our players in the National League or the Championship. You cannot just cherry pick who you want to do the interviews with. And we've had that stance now for 5 years. The journalist then emailed back and said, we don't want to interview anyone in the Championship. Well, if you want to work with me, you can't just come and cherry pick who you want to work with. That's not fair on my Championship players. We're also giving you extra work. I see a lot of journalists on Twitter begging for stories. What can I write about? I need help. Anyone got any stories? Message me. Come to me. I can give you 300 tomorrow morning. But you probably don't want to do the 300 that I'm going to give you because you don't want to work in the Championship. You only want to interview Viv Miedema, or Leah Williamson, or Mark Skinner. It doesn't work like that. You can't just start in journalism and start at the very top. Same in any industry.
I want to come on to Luke's comment in a second, but yeah, I just want to touch on this as well because what Gary's saying there, me and Catherine Paquette spoke about it on the show a couple of 3 weeks ago as well, and potentially, it is that lazy journalism, like you said, Reece, regarding sensational headlines. But I do think now the fans, because of Twitter and wherever you get your information from, I do think the fans are kind of more aware. So, for example, if a certain outlet puts something out, you might take it with a pinch of salt. Or if a specific journalist writes about it, you might take it with a pinch of salt. It might work at the start, so like they might put like something out there, but then you soon learn. Okay, well, last time that person said that, it was wrong. So I think it's okay at the start, but then hopefully you'd like to hope that like people kind of learn who the good ones are and who the bad ones are as well.
Go on.
I actually agree with you on that. There's a couple of journalists that work in women's football, and every time they put a story out, if it's about a player in the Championship or a player or a club in the Championship or a player in the Super League, it's interesting because the amount of players that we've got that will send me the link and just put, "Have you seen this?" And it's as if the players are sort of they know what's happening now. They know there's bias out there. They know it's some of the articles are a little bit embarrassing because if you can see through the articles, you know the reason why. And I think people are now starting to catch on to that. And if that is down to lazy journalism, they deserve to get caught out. If I'm a lazy football agent, I deserve to go bust tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I just want to touch on that. And, when I first started reading about women's football and there was, outlets that sort of charge. And I thought, you know what? Yeah, I am going to pay for them. But I've slowly stepped away, stopped paying for things. I mean, we've mentioned them a few times. The Athletic, and I saw something put out the other day, and the headline was Arsenal, Chelsea, and Man City have more Twitter followers or something like that than Premier League clubs. But really, if you look at it, it was Man United because Man City are joined, so you can't spread it. But the journalist or whoever, I don't even know, just copied it from Twitter. Someone had changed it based on the way they wanted and put it out and even admitted it. And I said, well, that's why I don't subscribe to this kind of thing. And I think if you're asking people for money as well, it's got to be top dollar. You can't just sort of ask for money and then it's just sort of like you say, 90% of it's just what that one person thinks. I want to have facts. I want to have a standard. And I think that maybe potentially, I don't know what you both think, what everyone thinks, maybe in women's football, a lot of people, and this is what I think of fans as well, have accepted a level of accepted standard because, like you say, it has been open. You have been able to just access and do everything. And I feel like as it grows, we need to raise them standards now and, not just accept kind of, oh, someone's writing about it. No, I want the facts. I want the truth. I don't just want you copying and pasting from Twitter. Anyone can write anything on Twitter. And I've had issues with said person. Well, I'm not even going to name, but I'm sure people can figure it out. But I've had issues with that same person copying and pasting something off Twitter. Next minute, it's in a national newspaper, and it just surprises me that this is the standard that we're setting, copying from Twitter.
Me and Rich actually had this same conversation last week in our office, and I wasn't aware that journalists actually worked with each other. I thought it was like the agent's business where you sort of a little bit of competitors and there's a competitiveness with each other, but I wasn't aware that journalists actually get on with each other and work because at the end of the day, if I'm a journalist, I want to be the best journalist. I want to put out the best stories. But I didn't realise the industry was...
What I want to say is the younger ones, I'm finding, I don't know what Rich thinks, the younger ones, I'm finding they do want to be the best. They do want to put it out. And I think even with transfers, we're seeing that. We're seeing people want to get the exclusives more now.
But that's the same in any sector, I think. It definitely applies to the football agent's business. I mean, like, you look at some of the older generation and, like me and Rich were just speaking off air and John, there's no social media presence. But if there's an agent at 50, 60, 70 years old that's not grown up with social media, They don't necessarily believe in it, and they don't understand the hype of player promotion through social media. And I think you've just mentioned about the younger generation of younger generation of journalists. It's the same with me as a football agent. My philosophy, my mentality is different to the 50-year-old football agents. And I think it is the same with the journalists.
Go on, Rich. I just want to hear what I suppose we've been talking
Well,
for
we
a
all get
while.
on Reece in journalism. That's why we're nice people. And you agent, you accept. You told me last week you all hate each other. So
See here, now we've got a perfect example here of a journalist spinning the topic onto
no,
agent.
that's what you told me. Trust me. No, I think the reason it's slightly different with that is what people don't see is we kind of, as a collective, have almost pushed for a lot of things. I mean, there's a comment below Luke's about information and contracts and signings and things like that. And yeah, we get massively frustrated that isn't out there in the public domain. And I think you saw that yesterday. A few of the journalists made comments on Twitter about the England squad, not coming out to journalist embargoed in advance, which it usually does. And there's one club specifically we talk about a lot that don't release contract information, and they're the kind of things we're pushing for with
Arsenal.
Yeah, with the Football Writers Association, with the Sports Journal. I mean, all the press conferences you guys see now, on almost 2 a week now, whether that's Mark at Man United or Gareth at City or Jonas doing his, Emma, every club now does pretty much press conferences because we pushed for that. They never happened. They might have happened before the odd big game. They weren't weekly. We as a group pushed for that because we want to get the information out there for fans and because it should be like the men's game. So those things are happening because we pushed for them as a group. And I think if we didn't sort of work together on that, we probably wouldn't get anywhere. I mean, yeah, we are competitors to an extent as well. Don't get me wrong. We are all after the same stories, but we're a close group of friends as well. We do get on, we socialise, unlike the agents, clearly. So it is slightly different. But we push for a lot, that maybe you guys don't see, that we're trying to.
I just want to touch on something then, Rich. When we're talking about lazy journalists, and because everyone's a bit lazy, football agents are lazy, fans are lazy, maybe some managers are lazy,
You got a frown on Reece then. You got a big frown on Reece then.
What do you think then when you hear me talk about a story about lazy journalists, Reece talk about it? There are some, aren't there? I know we're not going to name.
Look, the story you picked out there, I saw that exchange on social media the other day about the social media figures or whatever. Yeah, that's just a poor error. If the fact's out there that it's actually Man United and someone's seen Man City, copied and pasted it and put it in an article, that's poor. It's still not biased. It's just a poor error.
Are they going to get reprimanded by their editors? Will they get pulled up in the office a day after? Because if that's my office and someone puts something wrong out on social media, something gets said the morning after when I go in the office. Is it the same in journalism, or is it sort of, okay, just do better on your next article?
If I'm being honest, mate, I don't actually know. I'm probably the worst person to ask on that because I don't have an editor being freelance. This would be quite an interesting show to watch if you had a national journalist on. I'm probably the worst person to speak to about it because I can generally do what I want. Would they get I don't know. Depends on the editor. Depends on.
I'll tell you no, because I've had the same thing copied and pasted, full from Twitter, proved to be wrong, and then nothing's come of it. No apology, no nothing. It's just, and I think it's because it's women's football. Because there's not that. I don't know. I think a lot of fans maybe. This is where I said about now. We select a bit more, don't we, John? We select who we want to listen to. We select who we think, and I don't know. I feel like before everyone just accepted everyone. Oh, Sue, this one's great because she's the only one. I don't care. She's trash. Get her in the bin. Not in a horrible way.
I think a lot of it comes back to what we've talked about before on this with other things is that culture of secrecy around women's football that existed, whatever it was, 5-10 years ago. It certainly existed when I came into it, and it's improved. It's still not there. And people, I think that culture of secrecy comes from us as the media, and that we hide things away, or we don't want to do this, or we don't want to do that. It frustrates. We're the ones pushing every day to get more information out of clubs, to get more openness from clubs, to get these press conferences so we can get more information. There is still, I think, that culture of that's so it's so kind of just in women's football that it's how it always was, and some people don't want that to change, and you see that with lack of information over contracts from some clubs or this or that. But that doesn't, people say, "Oh, why aren't journalists?" At the end, we rely on. I know people think that we just make things up, but we rely on people giving us. If I write a factual piece about a transfer or something, I haven't just plucked that out of thin air. I've spoken to people, and at the end of the day, people don't want to speak to you. If I rang Reece up and said, "Reece, what's going on with your client?" Reece would probably tell me because we've got a good relationship. Contrary
No,
to what
I'll be honest with you, Rich. Not one person. I've never done a deal, and not one journalist has ever said how long's a contract. If you want to know the information, I've never been told by a football club, do not tell anyone how long this contract is. So I don't know why there's this secrecy, because I've never been told by a football club I'm not allowed to disclose that. I understand some clubs might like that mystery and that secrecy, but I've never come across any football club that's ever said to me, don't disclose this bit of information, or don't disclose this, or...
I think it depends on the club. Some clubs are very good at it. You read Man United's press releases. Man United are very open about their contract lengths. Man City are very open about them. I mean, Chloe Kelly today was one of them. We're very open. There are one or two, and yeah, Arsenal are one of them for whatever reason. That's their prerogative. I don't think I've ever seen Arsenal release a contract length. So if you can't get that information out of someone, you can't just make it up. I can't just go out and say Leah Williamson signed a new contract and it's 3 years.
Can you not go to her agent then? Should there not be better working relationships there?
But it depends if you might not know their agent. You might not have a good relationship. Some will. Some journalists will. I've got good relationships with some agents, and there'll be other journalists that've got relationships with other agents. So it all depends on who your sources are. But we rely on that. We don't just. I know people think we make things up or pluck things out of thin air, but we literally rely everything we write, everything we say when it comes down to fact. Opinions is a different thing. Opinions are opinions, but if you are dealing with a factual piece, a transfer piece, or whatever, you've spoken to people about that. What we put out there is what people have told us, and that's what I always say. And I know I'm going off topic a little bit with the transfer window and whatnot, but people have a go at journalists saying you got this transfer wrong, you got that transfer wrong, or whatever. You're relying on what people tell you, and what people tell you at that time may have been factual. Transfers change all the time, and we had one high profile in January, and one high profile journalist said one thing and it didn't happen, and she went to another club. But it may have been true at the time she wrote it. I don't know. But things change. And, we rely on that trust. I've worked for 10 years building that trust with certain people in women's football. That you almost play the long game a little bit to benefit yourself in the long run. But if someone tells us something, we have to use that in good faith. Sometimes it will be right, and sometimes we'll get it wrong. It doesn't mean you're biased. Sometimes it doesn't go your way.
Matt, I know that you've got something else that you want to talk about in regards to media voice as well. But just before we do, just a couple of quick things. Just one thing that was mentioned it was about 5 minutes ago now, but Reece was on about people wanting facts and things like that. And Nat, you says that we kind of cherry pick who we go for. I think for us now on Twitter, we want to read facts, we want to read quotes, we want to know what's being said. If we want to read opinions, we can just kind of read our own opinions. We read our own opinions every day in WhatsApp groups, all that kind of stuff. Everyone's got an opinion. It doesn't really mean too much, unless if it's a player's opinion or something, then it means a little bit more. So for us, that's what we want to read. We do want to read facts, and we want to read something really hardcore that you can't just get out of your own head. And secondly, go on now.
I mean, that's why. Obviously, that's why I have Rich on. We have Catherine on. Emma. These are people that I'm not saying that others aren't, but they're sort of the level, I think. And that's why I just feel like. Well, I think Catherine did a great piece on Coventry around the time of all that happening. She went to the wherever the past owners, went to the new owners. I know then Tom Gary did a piece, but we've had not issues, but questioned a lot. And I feel like maybe fans questioning has sort of led to a few people stepping up the game and bringing different things. But each paper or whatever wants different things, and then like what I said, isn't it? If that's how they operate, well, I just won't click and buy or read, because it's not what I want to see.
I think you're absolutely right, and especially just staying on that topic that you've just mentioned. I think the key thing that people need to take away is they don't need to believe everything that they read. Journalists are reporting from their opinions. Journalists are reporting on the time of the interview. But I know it does affect players, and especially when there's different things floating around on Twitter with different outlets, and players are starting to get used to it now, where they can see through the journalists, they can see through the outlets, they know what's coming before the articles even come out. And I just hope that more people start to see through them. Because what I would say is, go back to every single outlet, or go back to pick 2 or 3 different outlets, go back 2 or 3 months, see what they wrote, and let's see if it's actually come to fruition now.
Mm-hmm.
And I would guarantee that probably 80% of the stuff that certain outlets put out, 3 months later, there's still no change, or it's not happened, or they've said this will happen and it's not happened, or this was going to happen and it's. I just hope that more people start to see through certain journalists.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what Rich thinks, but as well, I know Rich, you're well sourced, and there's other people that are well, but I do think that sometimes I'll hear quicker about transfers than some journalists, and they'll come to me and say, "Oh, you guys are saying this," and I just feel like maybe fans are more in the know now than journalists. I mean,
I think that's down to journalists being a lot more open with us now. I don't know if that's like a new wave of things. Maybe journalists don't need to wait for ages to put them in a newspaper. They can, if they want to circulate something, it goes on Twitter, doesn't it, or chat to us. And we never say if we told. Yeah, go on.
And you get tagged in things as well now. Like, I mean, I love Asif. He tags us in everything, anything Man United, even if it's just Man United breathed. He'll tag us and we'll retweet it and share it with everyone, and now everyone's talking about it. And I don't, Luke C there's done a comment, when will WSL clubs have their own club commentators? And I get where he's coming from, because I don't want to hear what this, and that's why I love MUTV in a way, because I'm biased. I'll sit there and say, yeah, I'm biased. I don't want to hear someone talking about, oh, maybe it was not a red card. Jackie Oatley said it, actually. Jackie Oatley said, oh, it was a bit harsh, and no, it wasn't harsh. It was a red card, and that's what I want to hear. And I want to hear real talk. And if it's a slightly biased towards my club, then so be it. That's what I want to hear. So I'm happy to have MUTV and all these kind of. And you know what else I wouldn't mind? Club. And I think this is where we'll come. But club journalist, a journalist that just writes about that one club. We're seeing it a bit more. There's Jamie Spencer, I think his name, who's came on before. He's just now writing basically about Man United women.
But we're arguing here on the negatives of media bias.
No. But I like Man United bias.
That is going to cause even more media bias. Rich, I've got a question for you. So you mentioned earlier that there's a UK media group chat on WhatsApp. I think you worded it, the top journalists are in this in women's football. Only the top journalists are in this group chat. How many people are actually in it? How many journalists?
Oh, to be fair, I don't actually think I said it was the top. I think you're putting words in my mouth now, Reece.
I thought you said it would only be elite of the elite. But was it?
No, I mean, we let any old riff-raff in. Don't worry about that.
Why? When's my invite?
I'll tell you how many's in it.
Go on.
So there's 25 people are in it.
And how do you? Who manages this? So if I was
I'll be honest with you, there's only about 3 or 4 of us that post regularly, and I think we just annoy the life. I mean, I just literally post GIFs in there, so that's how serious I take it.
But then they said that this is where they get all the thing, and this is how they rally, and You see, Reece, we found it out now. We found out.
We've always been able to see through journalism.
Yeah.
Can I just bring one more point in before we talk about like that league structure that come out today as well? And much of it as well, just going back to this media bias things, comes from just general friendship within the game. So, for example, we might see now pundits who former players who know managers currently out there or whatever, and this could be like Casey Stoney's best friend who they used to play with together 3 years ago. Everyone loves Casey, and how much of it do you think comes from that? And I guess it's kind of natural to kind of defend your friend to a point, but I know Gary Neville got absolutely slated online for defending his friend Ollie, whereas on women's football, look the other way around. It's like the normal to defend your friends. It's so obvious to me that that's what happens. Do you guys just want to comment on that a little bit before we move on to something else? Start off with yourself, Rich.
I think I'll address what Nat said first about obviously transfers again and things like that, I think again that comes back to supply and demand. Obviously, some journalists and some outlets cover it. Obviously, Emma and the BBC do a great job of it. If that's the BBC's remit and they want to promote that and publish that, happy days. If that's what people want, some obviously aren't. I think you see probably more transfer tweets than transfer actual stories, like actually written in newspapers. And again, that will come back. I mean, I think we're a while from having sort of regular WSL club commentators. And again, if we have that, it will probably be the big clubs first. You'll probably have a Man United writer or a Man City writer or a Chelsea writer or an Arsenal writer. Again, the thing with transfers is sometimes there's just nowhere to put them. You know, for journalists, they have editors, and editors make decisions on things. A journalist might go to an editor and say, I've got this story, someone's joining Reading or someone's joining Birmingham City. The editor might turn around and go, no, we're not interested, no one will read it, you know. And if that's the answer, it's not going to get written. You know, I've said to Nat before, you know, I've heard so-and-so's going there or so-and-so's doing this, but it's not part of my job. You know, I'm a feature writer. My editor's never going to take a transfer story because it's not what we do. So I might have that information, but I'm not going to do anything with it because it's not part of my role. So that's kind of that on transfers. I think in terms of what you said, John, I can only really speak for myself on this. I mean, I don't really ask other people about it. It's quite a weird dynamic because, and maybe it depends on the person, but I actually feel more comfortable criticizing people that I know because I think I have that trust with them. So, you know, if I want to say Reece is a terrible agent, I can get away with it. Like, you know, things like that. But
it's no more teas or coffees in the office, so.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it was, no, and I think on a serious note, it's a strange one. I've never really had an issue like criticizing somebody that I know because I actually think it's easier for me, like because I think you've built up that relationship with them where they actually know who you are. They know that you're quite fair in terms of what you do. Whereas actually you criticize somebody that you never worked with, they might just think, "Oh, what's this guy on about? Like, why, you know, what's he having to go for no reason?" So no, actually, I'm kind of the other way around a little bit. Probably the better I know somebody, I think the more comfortable, not the more likely. I'm always fair. Like if I want to criticize, I'll criticize. If I want to praise, I'll praise. But I actually don't have an issue with criticizing somebody that I know or criticizing a club that maybe I've worked, you know, covered a lot of because they actually know me more than anything. So that's never really been. I can't speak on behalf of every journalist, but I think I've been in it enough now that yeah, I can sort of have a go at people that I'm quite, you know, if I've got a good relationship with them, it's not a problem.
But Nat, let me bring you in on it then, Nat. But what about the people who don't want to criticise the friends? Then that's the thing.
Oh, yeah,
Mick Davies doesn't mind criticising, but some of them just don't want to criticise.
I just want to look at two players. Nikita Paris, Demi Stokes should be nowhere near the England team. Let's be serious. Let's be honest about it. But they're in, and no one's mentioned. No one's even, you know, coughed and even said, "What are these two doing here?" So I know Rich is sort of sitting there and said that, but then he said Demi should be in the England team. So that's all I've got to say on that. I know.
Well, I'm not friends with either of them, so that's not a problem.
Well, that's why you're not criticising them because you're not friends with them. You see,
I know.
If he was
know
friends
Keith,
with them, he would criticise
quite
them.
well, but I don't know Demi that well. I know Keith's
Demi.
okay.
Go on, I saw Reece about to. So, what do you think? I suppose, and as well, what do you think about the England squad? Because for me, I think the fact that no one's even batted an eyelid and said anything, for me, that's a disgrace. That squad, and you're seeing fans talk about it more than journalists. Journalists not saying it because they're not friends or because they are friends.
Or they're scared, like someone said earlier.
They want to talk to Nikita later, or they want to talk to Demi if they win against.
I have seen a lot of fans say it's a good squad as well, so it does work both ways.
It's a disgrace, but anyway. But I think you should see.
Park's not in it, to be fair.
Well, yeah, of course you can't. You're a Man City fan, Rich. Sorry, Rich.
Sorry, I couldn't resist just a little getting a little nibble out of Nat there.
But no,
I don't have any thoughts on it. I'll be honest.
Reece probably thinks a certain Durham striker should be in it. Probably.
What's that? Sorry.
Reece probably thinks a certain Durham striker should be in it.
To be honest, over Nikita Paris. To be honest, she's got a better chance. She's got a better chance than Nikita Paris, and so is Lucy Watson and Courts. But anyway, that's another day.
If we're arguing data and statistics and facts, as people in the Championship have got a better goals to game ratio as strikers than what some of them people in the squad have.
I don't live by that.
However, just sort of going back to the last article, the last topic there about Rich and sort of criticising people. I got criticised in January for the handling of what I did with Coventry, and especially like with the Rio Hardy situation and what I advised my players at the time. One of the articles came out and absolutely battered me for the advice that I was giving players. But yet the journalist never came to me for my side of the story. And that is an opinion-based article. You're influencing how people view me, but yet you've not reached out to me to get my side of the story. And I find that very, very frustrating because you're very quick to show the negatives, show the facts instead. Come to me for my side of the story and I'll give you the facts.
Well, just a quick one on that. I do think that there is this kind of, that's why I say it's biased, because they want to present certain things in a certain way. And it's their way, and it's, I mean, it's great that Coventry survived. We're all sitting here, we did the show, and we didn't want to see them fail, but you said even on the show, you know, my players, this and that, and we were saying things like, you know, they've been messed about, so they're well within their rights to move on.
The advice that I gave my players still to this day hasn't been covered by any journalist, but yeah, there's been a lot of articles that have been written about the Coventry situation. But yet, the facts of the situation still haven't come out to this day. Now, whether or not the journalists know the facts, but they don't want to show the facts, I don't know. Journalists have been told the facts. Journalists have been told the inside stories. I spoke to more than enough journalists. But for some reason, they don't want to publish the facts. Whatever reason that is, I don't know. Maybe they've got mixed agendas. But I mean, I've literally got players texting me now that are watching the show saying it's exactly the same with the government and COVID, and it's an agenda. Yeah. And the mainstream media with COVID and the government. So it's not just women's football, it's men's football, it's every industry, it's the government.
Are your players comparing you to Boris Johnson? Are your players comparing me to Boris Johnson?
I don't think it's necessarily yourself, Rich. I know there's a few better journalists in women's football.
Ask your players to come on the show, and then we'll talk about you, Reece, and we'll see how much of a good agent you are, and we'll speak to your players.
I'll drop out again next week.
I get enough stick from the show anyway for being an agent. So
let's get Rio on.
Rio's been invited. Rio knows she's welcome.
Guys, I know we're coming towards the end of the show, but I did say before that we went live that we'll talk a little bit about this article that came out today. So only a quick 5-minute chat because we can cover it more next week. But it did come out today from Michael Cox, I think his name was, from Zonal Marking, his real big Twitter account, over 100,000 followers. And he came up with a proposal for a new WSL league structure. So I just want to get everyone's thoughts on it. So I'll just quickly run through it just in case anyone who's in the comments doesn't actually know what was said. It's basically come up with an idea that you play your 22 games as usual, but you play them quicker. So instead of having so many breaks here, there and everywhere, they would get done by, say, January, February time. So you play your 22 games and then the league will split. So the top 6 teams will all play each other again, and the bottom 6 teams will all play each other again, home and away. So that's another additional 10 games. So you're playing more games, but the idea is the lower teams aren't going to get such a whipping against the big teams because they're not going to play each other again. That was one thing he said. The second thing he said was a championship to go into 16 teams. And the third thing was the national leagues in Tier 3. 2 teams get promoted and maybe even 3 with the playoff. Don't need to go into too much detail, but just your thoughts on the WSL side of things, because that's one that we don't really hear too much about. Just thoughts on that one. Nat, do you want to come in first?
Yeah. Sorry, guys. Amy's just said it there. Scottish Premier League. How many people watch Scottish Premier League? How many people like that it's split up? No. Just do it normally. I don't understand why we're trying to do this, kind of split it into and then talk about thrashings when Birmingham just beat Arsenal. Yeah, Birmingham get beat, but they're sort of saying all these 9-0s. I've seen more 9-0s recently in the Premier League than we have in Women's Super League for yes, a while ago we did used to see it a lot, but I'm seeing now, I can't even remember last time, probably when we played Birmingham, that was the 5-0, Brighton just took Arsenal 2-1. So we are seeing closer games. We just need kind of really more teams, in my opinion. And I think we sort of talked about it, more teams, because if, say, 2 came up, at least they know that they're going to get points, maybe off each other, you know, and maybe off that one that was round near the bottom. But for me, we're talking about we're playing City. When is that? It's going to be the 3rd one. Then they're playing them again. That's the 4th one. So imagine if we did this. Imagine how bored we'd be. To be honest, I'm bored that there's already 4 times that we've played them. I don't want to play them 6, 7, 8, 9 times. It's boring. I want to watch, different teams, go to different places. I'm fed up of it always being Man City. I'm telling you, even though it's sold out, I don't care. I'm bored. I hate it. That's my opinion. Reece?
I think if the FA don't sort it this year, I think the FA are at risk of clubs defunding the women's team, because they're sort of chasing something at the minute, like when only one team can go up. I mean, you've got how many teams? If Newcastle go up this year from Tier 4 into Tier 3, you'll have Newcastle, Burnley, Bridgewater, Ipswich, Southampton, Forest, Derby, all trying to get into the Championship. If they say that only one team can go up, are there other 7 teams? I don't know. The FA are at risk of basically just messing up the whole football system for women's football if they don't sort it soon. But we've been saying this for 4 years and nothing's really changed yet. So,
Reece, why don't we do yourself?
I think I'm not against anything particularly that means we have more games. I don't agree with the first idea. It doesn't really add anything. I think, like Reece said, like Nat said, we just need to expand, and it's frustrating when you get to this time of the season for us. Obviously, like after the weekend, we've got 2 weeks without a game. Next weekend's the international break, but we've only got 3 players away. Like, the Championship could play through international breaks, and then the week after that is FA Cup weekend, when by this stage a lot of Championship clubs are out. We could play through that, but we don't have the games. All our games are scheduled in, so we just have empty weekends, and then there's another 2 weekends in April where it's the same thing. It's international break, and then it's the FA Cup semi-finals, and we're just sat there doing why are we not playing on FA Cup semi-final weekend? Because there isn't going to be any Championship teams in it realistically. So, and even if there was one in, you could still have 5 other games, and the other one would get slotted in. The reality is we don't have the games to put in. We run out of games. We only have 22. So I think that, I agree with what Reece said. I think it needs to be done. I mean, it's not going to happen this season because I think the rules are set in stone now. That one's going to come up and obviously one will go down. But it's frustrating because, we sat here at the start of the season and said, the Championship's probably going to be as competitive as ever, and it has been. But obviously a couple of kind of unique factors have kind of meant that it's almost over now. Liverpool are going to go up because they're a bit of an outlier and probably shouldn't be in this league in terms of the strength and what they have available to them. And there was always that fear that they were going to pull away. And obviously with what's happened with Coventry, it's kind of decided at the other end as well. So you've got this incredibly competitive league from sort of 2nd to 11th, but there's nothing really to play for apart from you don't get prize money, whether you come 2nd or 2nd top, 2nd bottom, it doesn't really make a difference. So, we're in February and kind of the most competitive league we've got is you're almost playing glorified friendly matches in a way, whereas if you have 2 up, 3 up, if you have playoffs or whatever, you actually look at the league table from 2nd down to around 7th or 8th. You could throw a blanket over all of them, but there's nothing happening. There's nothing to play for, so that's frustrating. And like Reece said, I think if they don't do it next season, when are you? Half the Championship's full time now, so why are you not opening up promotion to the WSL and the strong teams in the National League? So open up, throw in extra promotion spot, throw in playoffs, make it exciting. I don't think the Championship necessarily is ready for 16 teams because I think, we've probably got 3 or 4 spare weekends now, so 14 teams would work nicely because that's 4 extra games. I think if you throw in another 4 on top of that to take you to 30 a season, you're moving into the realms of having midweek games, which is still tough for some clubs like us who obviously are part-time. I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that our season 2 years in a row has kind of unravelled around October, November when you have those midweek cup matches because it's so hard for us. So, our best form has always come at the start of the season and then from January onwards, and I don't think that's a coincidence. So, maybe there'll be that discussion long-term about making sure every club's full-time. That's a different debate, but It just needs to have an approach where we're proactive, but you don't run before we can walk. And I think both leagues going from 12 to 14 is natural. And my suggestion on that next season would be have one down from the WSL, have 3 go up. That pushes 2 more into the WSL. Have maybe the top 2 go up automatically, and then have a playoff. Whether that's a playoff between 3rd and 4th, or you have a playoff between 3rd to 6th, and you have semi-finals and a final, and then have 2 go down at the bottom and bring 6 up, bring 3 up from each league, and you push the championship forward. You have the top 2 up from each league in the north, 2 from the north, 2 from the south, and then again playoffs. Make it exciting and give everyone an opportunity, because right now you're having to win the league, and for teams that are 5th, 6th, 7th, the season's done. If you can come 4th and go up, the season's alive till the end.
The FA aren't that creative, Rich. Really, let's be honest. They might do 2 up. They might do 2 up though. That's what I think they might do. 2 up, 1 down, kind of thing, like you've said.
No,
but they're not going to do no playoffs. That's too creative for them. Playoffs, imagine.
I mean, if it doesn't next season, like we said, I think you're going to have clubs that start saying, "Why are we putting money in just to,
sit in the championship,
tread water every year?" And Sheffield United is a good example of that. We're looking at it going, how do we make that step up? Or if suddenly you can come 4th and go up, or you might be a bit more tempted to put a little bit more money in. Whereas at the minute, you're looking at it and going, well, for so many teams to make that jump to just having to win the league, it's hard. It's really hard. So there's no negatives to it. The clubs want it, the fans want it, everybody wants it. Put it in place. It's not hard to do.
We have come to the end of the show. I know we need to shoot off. Thank you for everybody who's joined us. Thank you again, Rich and Reece, and we're back as normal tomorrow. So keep in touch, guys, and we shall see you again soon. Thank you, guys.
Bye.